He lost once, twice, 10 times. The crowd remembered every defeat. But they never imagined the man who always lost would one day become the champion they could never forget.
All right, let's dive straight into the anatomy of resilience. Today in this explainer, we're breaking down a really gritty, incredible story about a fighter to uncover the actual, real-world blueprint for overcoming failure. It's this profound look at what happens when human willpower goes head-to-head with repeated, agonizing defeat. So let's pull this journey apart and see exactly how a mindset of absolute, unshakable grit is built from the ground up.
You know, the core philosophy here completely flips our cultural obsession with undefeated records on its head. We all love a flawless victory, right? But this narrative suggests something different. The strongest fighters aren't the ones who never fall, they're the ones who always rise again. True strength isn't just avoiding failure, it's the repetition of recovery. The strongest people out there, they literally make a habit out of getting back up.
When you actually map out the timeline of this journey, it totally proves that failure isn't just a possibility, it's a required stop on the path to success. Look, it doesn't go straight from making a vow to winning the championship. It's just not a straight, easy line up to the top. Right smack in the middle, around month 6, there's a second major defeat. And this is so crucial for all of us trying to hit our own goals. Failure isn't some detour taking you off your path. It's a scheduled milestone right on the timeline.
So the story kicks off with this young fighter in an underground arena, and honestly, everyone expects him to lose. Picture a dusty floor, a brutal knockdown, and an audience that only sees this surface-level loss. To them, it's just another broken dream. But while the crowd is busy laughing at him physically collapsing, they're completely missing the invisible emotional callousing that's taking place. Every single time his back hits that mat, a brand new layer of resilience is being formed. Later, sitting totally alone in a dim gym, just methodically wrapping his bruised hands, with the rain pouring outside, he makes this incredibly profound promise to himself. And it's right here, in this dark, completely unglamorous moment of isolation, that the real victory actually begins. This vow, to never quit, to keep getting back up no matter what, it isn't shouted out to a cheering crowd. It's a quiet, solemn promise made in the dark, and it becomes the absolute bedrock of everything that follows. He literally deletes the word quitting from his vocabulary.
But here's the thing. An emotional promise is pretty much useless without physical execution, right? So he translates that vow into an absolutely brutal daily regimen. We're talking mountain sprints before the sun is even up, punishing the heavy bag, and pushing through strength training long after the sun goes down. Every single drop of sweat becomes a physical manifestation of that promise he made back in the dark gym. He's actively bridging the gap between an impossible dream and tangible reality through sheer, relentless output.
Now, naturally, you'd expect all that cinematic, montage-level training to guarantee a victory. And that brings us to a massive twist. If you've ever watched, a classic Hollywood sports movie, you know the formula. The hero gets knocked down, we get this epic training sequence with some great music, and boom, they win the next big fight. We're intentionally led down this super familiar path. We see all that hard work and think, okay, surely this translates to immediate success, right?
Well, in a pretty shocking twist, months later, he loses by decision, and the crowd actually celebrates his failure. He steps under those bright professional lights, puts all that grueling new training to the test, and still comes up short. It is a crushing, incredibly realistic moment. Because sometimes, even when you do everything absolutely right, even when you outwork everyone around you, you still fail. And to make it sting even more, the crowd is actively cheering for his downfall. It's the ultimate test of his original vow.
But instead of breaking, he does something wild. He smiles through the loss. It totally subverts all expectations because he actually recognizes his own incremental growth. This is the exact moment the narrative pivots from a simple physical sports drama into a brilliant psychological lesson. He bows respectfully after the match, and he smiles. Why? Because his whole metric for success has fundamentally changed. He isn't defining his worth by the referee's decision or the crowd's reaction anymore. He's measuring himself against who he was yesterday. He knows his punches are faster, his endurance is up, his mind is sharper. He lost the match, sure, but he is winning his own evolution.
And that brings us to the absolute deepest lesson of this whole explainer, separating the superficial physical battle from the brutal psychological war. Honestly, the physical obstacles, the guy standing across the ring trying to hit you, the physical exhaustion, the bruises, that's actually the easier fight. The true heavyweight champion you have to beat, it's entirely internal. It's the fear of being embarrassed again, it's that crippling self-doubt, and it's that insidious little voice constantly whispering that it's okay to just walk away. So back in an empty gym, shadowboxing under a single spotlight, he has to systematically hunt down and defeat these inner demons before he can ever hope to win in public. Surrounded by this cinematic smoke and dramatic lighting, he is quite literally shadowboxing his mental hurdles. He takes them on one by one. First, he tackles the fear of public failure, fully accepting that the crowd's laughter does not dictate his reality. Next, he strikes down the self-doubt, using the undeniable, hard evidence of his own relentless training. And finally, he completely silences the urge to surrender, doubling down on his original vow to never, ever quit. Then, when the championship bell finally rings, he weaponizes every single past defeat and moment of sacrifice into pure, undeniable power. We've reached the climax, the final fight. But here's the thing. He hasn't just brought his physical muscles into the arena, he's brought his entire history of pain. He takes all those underground losses, those lonely nights wrapping his bruised hands, the agonizing mountain sprints, and that humiliating second defeat, and he condenses all of it into kinetic energy. He's no longer running from his failures, he's literally using them as fuel.
He absolutely refuses to lose this time, and in doing so, he earns not just the ultimate victory, but the profound respect of the exact same crowd that used to laugh at his pain. The final bell echoes, and the reaction is so telling. It's not this immediate roaring cheer. It starts with a stunned silence. The crowd actually has to take a second to process the sheer magnitude of the human willpower they just witnessed. Only then does the golden confetti fall, and the arena just erupts. He forced the world to respect him, not by demanding it, but by displaying a spirit that was quite literally unconquerable.
Which brings us to the ultimate thesis here. A true legacy is built on unyielding persistence and grit, way more than it's built on a flawless, undefeated record. Perfection is actually pretty forgettable because it's totally unrelatable. Struggle, on the other hand, that is universally human. When we see someone get knocked down over and over, and they just flat out refuse to stay down, that resonates deep within us. His legacy was cemented the exact moment he chose to rise after that very first defeat.
Look, we are all going to face our own underground arenas, our own very public defeats, and our own massive inner demons. The only variable we actually control is our response to them. Thank you so much for exploring this concept with me today in this explainer. I want to leave you with this one final crucial thought. When you inevitably hit the mat, are you going to stay down, or will you smile, get back up, and get to work? What is your next move when you fall?
A true champion isn't remembered because he never fell. He's remembered because every time life knocked him down, he stood back up. Today, the crowd cheers not for his victory, but for the courage that made it possible.